Big changes are coming to the internet, and it could have a big impact on your business. Top-level domains, what you know as .com, .net, .info, they're all about to be joined by some new versions like .google, .amazon, and even .lol. Joining us today to talk about the changes is Shawn Gunnarson. He's a partner at Kirton McConkie. He specializes in internet governance. Shawn, thanks for taking some time with us today.
Thank you.
So how big of a change to the internet are we talking about, and when will we see it?
It is the biggest single visible change to the internet in its history. We will begin seeing the change within the next year to 18 months. The change will affect, I believe, what most users experience online. Instead of having the 22 or so top-level domains you described, like .com, we'll now have hundreds. ICANN, the organization we'll talk about in a moment, has announced applications of over 1,900 new TLDs, of whom, let's say, 1,000 to 1,100 are most likely going to be granted. So it will literally explode the number of top-level domains available online.
You mentioned ICANN. Who is ICANN, and why do they get to be in charge of the internet?
ICANN is an acronym for the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. It's a private corporation located in California. It has the power to decide which top-level domains go on the internet thanks to a contract with the U.S. Department of Commerce. That contract entitles ICANN to be the technical coordinator for the entire global internet. Part of its responsibilities is to determine which top-level domains will appear on the internet worldwide.
And this isn't cheap. We're talking $185,000 for an application, but that didn't scare anybody off.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. ICANN had assumed that at most they would be receiving 500 applications. That was the premise on which the whole application program was built. Instead, we see almost 4 times that many from all over the globe. This is not just a North American phenomenon. We had over 675 from Europe. We had nearly 400 from Asia. This truly is a worldwide phenomenon, and not just a phenomenon in the high-tech industry alone. We would expect that a company like Google would apply for a lot, although 50 applications is a lot of applications from a single entity, even from Google. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, not a big surprise that they're big players in this development. But what is surprising is that we've seen applications from churches, from nonprofit organizations, from community organizations, from old-time brands that have had comparatively little to do with online, such as Tiffany, Chanel. We see some very unusual entrants in this space, and I think it's due in part because so much of our global marketplace is shrinking. It's becoming smaller as more and more business gets done over the internet.
Who's not on the list? Who would I be surprised to not find on that list?
Well, personally, I was surprised not to see .coke and .pepsi. Those were 2 names that got widely talked about before this all rolled out, and neither of them ended up there.
That's amazing, because you would think they'd be right up there with McDonald's and Walmart and all the other big names. What is the probability that .google or .bank or .lol becomes as ubiquitous in our minds, that it's part of what we think? How will it reach that level?
Well, excellent question. We're making guesses about the future, of course. We've never done anything like this. But I think the list of names gives us a couple of indicators here. In the first place, think of a brand name the way that it would appear on a whiteboard. You have the brand name all by itself now. So instead of Tiffany.com, it will be simply .tiffany. Nothing else there, nothing to clutter up your brain when you're thinking about where to find your next purchase from Tiffany. The same for McDonald's, same for any of the other brand names that appear there. For them, I would imagine it's pretty easy, because essentially what we'll do is to strip away that sort of surplus ending that we've become accustomed to with the .com. Some of the new ones, though, are tougher goes. We'll have a .inc, we'll have a .app. Whether or not the folks marketing those names will be effective and getting them planted in our brains quite as effectively, only time will tell.
Do you think businesses will just want to take multiple domains, part of these top-level domains, and send everyone to the same content?
Good question. I think it's going to very much depend on how users begin reacting to the new space. It's one thing if you have a comparatively small marketplace. Again, most of us now probably use 3 to 5 TLDs in any given week. It's very rare for us to venture out beyond that. We're simply going to be entering a new world. We don't really know how users globally are going to react either to the true generics like a .web or to the new brand names where you have content now located at .chanel. It's very much going to depend on how marketing is effective, and frankly it's also going to depend on if there's new content there. I mean, one of the things that will draw users to a new TLD is if the marketing department at these companies decide they're going to offer new content they've not previously made available at the new top-level domain. And some of them may be talking about that even now.
All right, so we've talked about some of the big names, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. How does this change impact businesses here in Utah?
Well, there are a couple of ways that businesses here in Utah can be effective. The first way is that an industry name can show up on the internet that hasn't been there before. A great example is .bank. A couple of competitors are going after .bank. That name, once it gets approved by ICANN, will instantly be associated with every lending institution called a bank. Regardless of whether they're very small, like a credit union, or very large. There are technical differences, of course, among credit unions and banks and investment houses and so on, but for many in the public mind, .bank covers a wide variety of financial services.
It's just the place where money is.
It's just the place where money is. So the question is, first off, whether or not any of the local businesses have had any say in the application for .bank, and if they haven't, have they evaluated the potential effects on their business for allowing somebody else to gain control of that name? That's the first thing that can happen. The other thing that can happen, of course, is a much broader generic like .web. Use .web as an example. It may be that the slate of domain names that RC Willey now has is perfectly adequate to get users in the door and to show them everything that's going on. But 3 years from now, it may well be that because of the content available and, frankly, the other competitive choices made by different businesses start drawing a whole lot of business in the direction of .web. At that point, it may be very sensible for RC Willey to buy some space on .web in order to ensure that any customers that would be used to traveling to .web to find whatever they're looking for would find RC Willey if they were looking for it.
So the most recent change in top-level domains is the .XXX, and a lot of businesses, the Chamber included, had to go out and buy something that they have no interest in using solely to keep their message or to keep other people's pornography off their site. Isn't this just creating a commodity out of nothing? Is it a waste?
Very fair question. Let me answer it in 2 parts because I think it makes a difference whether we're talking about a generic name like .web or a brand name like Tiffany, or if we're talking about a pornographic specific name. For instance, .adult is one of the names that's been applied for. In the case of .adult, pretty clearly the content that will be there is pornographic. And a legitimate organization like the Chamber really should be concerned about whether or not their name will appear in that space. I think it's worthwhile to evaluate whether or not applications for sexual content related TLDs ought to be granted. And if they should be granted at all, shouldn't there be additional protections for legitimate organizations so that they don't have to pay for the privilege not to appear in that space? That's a different situation than, say, the .bank situation that we were talking about earlier. There's no question that whatever content appears under .bank is very unlikely to be of a sexual nature. The question there is one of competition, marketing, whether it's appropriate to have so broad a term used on an online space when it's a regulated industry. Those are different kinds of questions. To an extent, a small business here in Utah can be somewhat less concerned about a space that is sort of new and untried, that's very generic and could be attracting a lot of different kinds of content than they are if it's purely a sexual site. There is a concern that we have protection for businesses when the site is pornographic, and I think that Utah businesses ought to step forward and have their say about the kinds of protection that businesses should enjoy there.
We've talked a lot about the risks, but business leaders know with risk comes opportunity. So what are some of the opportunities for Utah businesses because of this change?
Well, let me just name a couple or three very quickly. The first one is that this list includes 116 internationalized domain names. That means that those final letters, those final characters after the dot are now going to be in non-Latin script. They're not only going to be not in French or German or English or Portuguese, they're going to be in Cyrillic or Arabic or Mandarin. They're going to be in languages we've never had at the top level or had in very low numbers. Given the high concentration of language ability here in the state, I think that presents a wonderful opportunity for small businesses that would like to begin marketing in China, for instance, to be able to take advantage of those internationalized domain names where there will be sort of a new cachet that comes with having the entire domain name under that single language script. Also, it's the case that this new development means the growth of a lot of new industries. The greatest number of applications was brought forward by a startup from Washington State called Donuts Inc. And Donuts Inc. raised over $100 million in venture capital money. There's a lot of work to be done there in order to defend their 300 applications. And once defended, whatever those names get approved, to actually provide the goods and services necessary to see that organization succeed. Utah has a wonderful body of engineers and other technical advisors that could provide great services for an organization like Donuts.
$185,000 a pop times 300 applications is around $55 million. That's a significant investment.
Yes.
If a local business is concerned about this is the first they're hearing about it, and they're concerned, have they missed the boat? Is the application process closed? Is there anything that can be done?
Wonderful question, because the answer is no. Businesses will have an opportunity in the next 60 days, well, less than 60 days now, until about August 12th, to make their views known through a public comment process. That process will allow them directly to be able to have their say about names they're concerned about, whether it's .bank or .web or some other industry name or competitor's name that they feel is taking unfair advantage of the process. Or worse yet, a trademark infringement or something else where their direct business interests are at stake. In any of those cases, the public comment process allows them an opportunity to bring forward information that ICANN will use when it's evaluating the applications. The second thing that businesses should understand is that they have an opportunity to formally object to any of those applications. There's a small number of grounds. Owning a trademark that suddenly appears on this list is one of those grounds. And businesses should really carefully evaluate whether or not there are risks that they're really unaware of right now that might exist because of these applications, and act in time in order to try and mitigate or remove those risks.
Shawn Gunnarson is a partner at Kirton McConkie, specializing in internet governance. Big changes coming to the internet. Thanks for making us aware and letting us know what we need to do going forward.
Thank you for inviting me.